안녕하세요. It's nice to meet you again in the week 2 of the class Understanding Korean Cultural Heritage. I hope you enjoyed reading and following the week 1, which was overview of Korea. So let's begin our real exploration into topics today. We'll talk about traditional life. So with this concept, traditional life, probably I'll spend next 2 or 3 weeks. First, general characteristic, social and cultural, and then we'll talk about more specifically the housing, clothing, and the food, and etc. Okay, so I think this lesson 2 is especially very important because it characterizes our beginning and also the foundation of Korean traditional society. Let's start. So again, traditional life in Korea, that's the main title of the week. So there are 3 objectives. First, fundamental characteristics. Fundamental characteristics. What characterized the Korean traditional society from others? What's the difference? So what's the key foundation, key characteristics? So those are the things I'm going to address in this lecture. The identify Korean family and kinship system. In every culture, I think the family is the basic unit of a society, is a basic foundation, and also is important in every culture. But in case of Korea, this specific term, family, carries utmost importance, even today. So in a way, I think the Korean studies, a lot of cases, study of family or kinship systems. And in the later part of the class, you will learn about procedure of the ancestral rite called ch2 in Korea. And you will see the actual step-by-step procedures and also its meanings. The first term I start this semester, this lesson is called 우리, which means us, our, we. But interesting enough, or very strange enough, when a Korean says, let me introduce my son, we always say, let me introduce our son, 우리 아들. Or if you are supposed to say, let me introduce my wife. But in Korean, the Korean always says, I introduce 우리, our wife. Sounds strange. It's not our, it's your and my. But it's grammatically wrong, but culturally, Korean always used the term 우리, this strange emphasis of this term. 우리 actually has very important meaning, which characterize Korean traditional way of life. That's the key concepts I want to address in this lesson. So actually the 우리, the term, is said to have come from 울타리, which means the wall around the house. So it's a border. So it's outside or inside. So if you are inside of family, that's called 우리, us or we, it means. And this wall establishes a living space for a family. So those who live with this boundary called 우리, without distinguishing between individuals. So this emphasis of the term can be extended to so-called 우리ism or weism. If I write here, weism. It's the emphasis of this sentiments of being together. We are as a group. So this is very important orientation, can be found in Korean traditional way of life and also still traditional way of thinking. And there are two reasons, scholars agree. These phenomena, social and cultural phenomena, can be understood two different perspectives. First, economic perspective. And secondly, historical perspective. I will just point out two different perspectives here, but I will save it for you to learn by reading the lecture notes. So I'm not going to explain what each perspective says. Actually, this is what the chip or the Chinese character, we read it ka, looks like. And again, the family system forms the foundation of Korean traditional society. So when you say 국가, which means a country or nation, if I write in Korean, it looks like this. Ka, I already talked about, means a house, a family. Kuk indicates a nation. So 국가 means a nation. But as the term itself shows, a nation itself is an extension of a family. So you have family, 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 and virtually one big family. That's the notion of a nation in traditional Korean society. So again, the Korean family system, that's the main corpus of the lecture today. These are the few concepts to be explained in the notes. The patriarchy, this very important term here, the patriarch. The opposite term is matriarch, of course. So in traditional society, the eldest male of the oldest surviving generation is the family head. He's the one. He has the authority to decide over the matters. Who's going to marry whom? What to do with the properties? Again, who will organize the ancestral rituals called ch2 and etc. So he is the power in the traditional society. And the structure of the family system, so-called stem family structure, which is very interesting structure you will learn in the class. In Korean, we always say 큰 집, which means it's big house. That means there is a 작은 집. Again, if I translate it, smaller house. But this does not indicate the actual size of house. This indicates very unique stem family structure. Again, you will get to know more about these in the lecture notes. So please follow step by step in the class. And these social structure kind of characterize traditional society and also these relationships, family relationships based on filial piety, so-called hyo. If I write in Chinese character, it looks like this. The scholar says this Chinese character, which means filial piety, literally shows what it means. Actually, this contains two parts. If I take it, this part plus, maybe some of you already know, but this indicates a person or a young son. And this part shows an old person, maybe old father or grandmother, a grandfather walking with crane, walking sticks. So this old person was taken after by his son or grandson. What does that mean? That's filial piety. You take care of your parents and grandparents. So these are basic, the key relationships basically governing not a family and also whole society. So the people of the nation should be loyal to his ultimate father, which is the king. So this is very interesting notions. Again, this will be re-explained throughout the class in the future. So these Chinese Confucian principles, another big terms here. We talk about family today. Another interesting concept here, Confucian. So Korea is very Confucian society, even today. But what those Confucianism means and what Korean Confucianism differ from other Confucian countries, there's another interesting topics you will pursue. Again, it's very run deep in Korean culture. So these are the summaries of the week 2. It's always the group-minded mentality is very important. Individual, they are not separate being. They are individual under a community or family. And it's a very patriarchal family system. And there are 2 reasons why Korean traditional society was that patriarchal. So again, I mentioned economic perspective and also historical perspective. And by nature, this the Confucian ideology, traditional life was a very hierarchical order of human relations. I will address that in the lecture notes again. So the Koreans have placed the highest value on community cooperation, and just as they have a valued harmony with nature. What does that mean? Again, different from individualistic culture, Western culture, it's always the family, the community is more important. And also, because of this agrarian environment, which means the share of labor and cooperation is critical virtue. So this makes Korean, they put higher value on the community spirits. So individualistic emphasis is less valued in traditional culture. But again, in this contemporary changing culture, we can see very interesting tension between this traditional community-oriented the ethos and its fast-growing individualistic orientations, especially among a young generation. It creates very interesting and important tension in contemporary culture. So again, hopefully sometime during this semester, we'll compare the traditional society and its changing contemporary society over the issue of individualism and communalism. So this is it for lesson 2. Thank you.